No, the paradox of catastrophe is that even in the darkest time, life doesn't stop, and we in Ukraine do know it now. What does it mean, actually, to live through war while juggling many roles? Journalist, writer, translator, mother, friend, partner. How do we create a sense of normalcy amidst the abnormal and hold on to what makes us human? How does war change the way we communicate and relate to each other? And what happens next when the war is over? Today we have an honor to have on the stage two writers, one who has lived through war in her own country and whom we know well on this day, Aida Cerkez. And we also have Kateryna Kalytko. Kateryna Kalytko is Ukrainian writer, poet, member of PEN Ukraine, and she is also a skilled translator of Balkan languages who has earned multiple awards for her translations. Please, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Here I am again.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to greet Aida once again on the stage and in Ukraine. Our conversation is unmoderated, and probably we'll just share some experiences and stories from our war realities, and maybe I'm gonna be the one who's putting more questions, and some of them may be rhetorical, because it's in a way it's a conversation between future and present time, because you're experienced the war and experienced the peace established after the war, and justice, whatever it means. And we are still facing the need of justice. So I remember our conversation in Sarajevo last year with the group of Ukrainian artists, and you shared the story of war coming into the city in your life, and about your mother who just said once and once again that war is coming closer and closer, but happily, thanks God, not too close. Could you please repeat, maybe it's for our audience, because looking back into these 3 years of full-scale invasion, we also do remember this moment of war coming into our lives, and this strange belief or disbelief that this is happening with us in our homes.
Yeah, it was actually, I was inspired to tell you that story, which I'm going to repeat now. Again, as I mentioned, by my colleague in Kiev, Anna. As I said, it was Tuesday when we were talking on the phone, many editors from all over the world, and everybody was concerned. We discussed stories and cooperation, and that Tuesday we were concerned about Ukraine, because there were these Russian forces organizing a military exercise at the border to Ukraine. Now, who does that? And we asked Anna, I mean, what's the situation over there? And she tried to convince us that this is really just a military exercise and that nothing is going to happen. And I was listening, having gone through what I have been going through 30 years ago, where the siege of Sarajevo also happened with a military exercise around the city by the military. I said, who exercises on somebody else's border? That's rude. They're going to roll in. And Anna goes, no, they wouldn't dare. From whom? No, that cannot happen. She was so convincing, but I wasn't angry with her. I remember that at some point I just said, Anna, I don't want to discuss this further with you. I just want you to take pen and paper and write down the following. Water purification pills, plastic jerry cans, candles, oil. And I kept on saying, what are you dictating? I'm dictating to you what you're going to be needing in a few days. And Anna just refused to even write down. She later emailed me to send her that list. But I wasn't frustrated with her denial, and I wasn't angry because I remembered myself, the idiot, who's sitting in Sarajevo watching all these weapons on the mountain. Sarajevo is in a hole. It's surrounded by mountains. Being installed over there and thinking, oh, this is a military exercise, it's okay. That was so stupid, I'm ashamed of myself. But maybe the best illustration of denial of what's coming to you is my mother. Yugoslavia used to be made of 6 republics. And the ones all the way to the west, close to Austria, is Slovenia. That's where it started. It was a 4-day war, and we watched it on television, and my mother cried. Oh, this is horrible. Who would have thought that this would happen in Yugoslavia? We're all brothers and sisters, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And she would always end with the same sentence, her lamenting. Thank God it's not here. Okay, that went on, and then it spilled over into Croatia. That's already one republic closer to us. The next is Bosnia. And my mother was glued to the television. Oh, look at these tanks. And she was crying, and she was genuinely feeling pain for all these people in Croatia. And, you know, every time her tears would end with the same sentence, thank God it's not here. One day, the fighting spilled over the border into Bosnia, into a town on the border. And we watched this in disbelief. And that was already in Bosnia, but somehow far away from Sarajevo. And we were seriously concerned, couldn't sleep that night, but in the morning, the discussion about this whole thing ended with the same sentence. Thank God it's not here. Then it went from village to village, further down, until one day the phone rang and my aunt from another part of Sarajevo called, and we couldn't even understand what she was saying because she was sobbing. I said, Gordana, I can't hear anything you're saying. What the hell? I'm watching bombs falling on this neighborhood. From my balcony, I can see it. And we were trying to calm her down. And I remember my mother hanging up with her. I said, Gordana needs serious help from a doctor, you know. And I said, maybe they're really shooting. You think so? You know, where is it? Sokolovic colony over there. That's kind of 10 kilometers from here. And my mother said, oh, thank God it's not here. Within 3 or 4 days, I was standing with my baby in the kitchen, leaned against the, kind of leaning on the radiator. The balcony door was open, and my mother was frying something. When I heard the mortar shell for the first time in my life, it fell on the roof of the building across the street. I've never heard such an explosion. The baby started crying immediately, and we were all stunned. And then I saw this gray smoke coming up, and whatever was frying in that pan was burning. My mother stood with the fork and, oh, did you see that? I said, yeah. And then she said it again. Thank God it's not here. As a mom, it's here. We have to go to the basement. To the last moment, and even beyond that moment, you don't want to believe that what you have been watching all your life on TV happening in Iraq, in Syria, in Bangladesh, in somewhere, who knows, happening, you know that there is something like a war. It happened in the past here, but now it's just happening to other people. It cannot happen to you. And that's an illusion. It's like how smokers think. They all know that smoking causes cancer. And they will acknowledge it, that they know. But it's not going to happen to them. And that's how it's probably a defense mechanism, because otherwise, I don't know, we would commit collective suicide if we would really be aware of reality. But the denial is so strong. And once you realize it is here, it is happening to you, you quickly adapt. It's unbelievable how quickly people adapt. They adapt so fast and so thoroughly that they expose themselves to danger. You know, but for a whole year, we knew that down that one street, the sniper is shooting at everything that moves for 24 hours. And one day I see this guy walking down the street. He stopped caring. It didn't matter to him anymore whether he's going to live or die. It didn't matter to him anymore. He was sick and tired of sitting home. And that's dangerous. But what I want to emphasize with this story is that you have to fight your own disbelief sometimes in order to faster realize in what kind of a situation you're in and start the adaptation process. Or otherwise, you'll either go crazy or you will run around through life constantly wondering what the hell is going on, or you will die. So that was my little mother story.
Thank you for sharing. You know, I used to be the crazy one who just for years and years was repeating that the war with Russia is coming. It's only the matter of time, of timing, let's say. And I was the one who started to translate Bosnian literature, to bring some Bosnian perspective to Ukrainian audience, to make our narratives closer, because we have, due to the tradition of Russian-inspired propaganda, we looked at the so-called Balkan Wars through the Serbian lenses. And I found that unfair, and I tried to see this situation from the, not situation, the war, the tragedy and genocide from different perspective and from the different point of view. So I was like, please read these books, please learn from the Bosnian experience. It's the reality which expects us one day or another. And then we talked about this a bit earlier today. On the March 5th, after the full-scale invasion erupted, I was prepared, in fact. I packed my emergency bag, never used it, but nevertheless. I got a bunch of proposals from all over the world, friends and institutions to flee for residence, to come for exile, to stay at somebody's home and so on and so on. I refused, it's logically, and on March 5th, 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion erupted, the airport in my city, Vinnytsia, was struck by a Russian missile. And I was standing near my house and looking at this black smoke from the airport just a few kilometers away from me. And I was thinking, wow, it's here, unbelievable. I was a part of this collective war story since the 2014. I was volunteering for military, going to the front line very often, so I was not like a part of this story, but the feeling when the war comes to home is uncomparable. And remembering those first days of the full-scale invasion, I would say that the belief in justice, in the possibility of justice, was kind of our religion. And now, you said, you mentioned it, that everything burns out from inside at a certain point when you're living through the war. I would also say that maybe we don't believe in justice anymore. In justice in that shape which would Ukrainian way of justice. So after the 30 years of peace in divided Bosnia, do you feel justice was realized in its full meaning, not only like international court naming the war criminals and so on and so on? Is it fair to Bosnian people what happened after the Dayton, after the division of the country, and after the situation was like freezed just like that?
No, it wasn't. But I think that you should not expect full justice ever. You know, you should seek for the most justice you can get. It's never going to be as much as you want. If you kill my child and you go to jail for 40 years, is that justice? For me, as a mother, it's not. It's partial justice. It's an acknowledgement of the truth that you have killed my child. And the whole world now has acknowledged that it's your fault. But is this going to bring my child back? No, it's not. But you have to make the best out of it. Seek for as much justice as you can get in today's world. Right now, the moment is not really good. But always remember, it's just, this is a long process. And it may take your lifetime. And you may think, okay, so the rest of my life I'm going to spend in this battle, really? Well, you know, I have come to peace with that. Yes, my whole life will be a battle. But in Sarajevo, there is is it a tourist spot? It's like where we go on weekends. It's a long alley with big platen trees, left and right. It's a beautiful valley. It goes down to the source of the Bosnia River, and you can take a coach, you know, with horses, and you can sit in that. And it'll drive you down this alley with these huge trees. I like to sit in the back and look up and see all these trees. You can't see the skies from the trees, and I often think the people who have planted these trees knew that they will never live to see this beauty of this alley, but they still planted it. Maybe what you're going through, maybe right now it's bad for Ukraine and it's difficult times for you, but you are fighting a battle that will probably bring the human race forward in a certain way. You're fighting for democracy. I think that's a very noble battle, and you are actually on the front line of a war that's going on right now in the whole world. You are fighting our battle too. It's, as we heard, between authoritarian regimes and democracy, and you are on the front line. Now, this may mess up your life, but see it as you being those people who planted the trees on that beautiful alley, and one day somebody is going to be riding in a coach and enjoying on a Saturday that democracy that you have planted, and that's worth fighting and living for, in my mind.
The beautiful point, thank you. I remember the moment when I realized that my whole life will be part of war and post-war recovery. And it was like a relief when you can shape your future somehow, because we are futureless at the moment. I feel it like that. We can't plan for some long-term projects. We are not sure that we will wake up in so-called peaceful cities, which are relatively far from the front line, but still this feeling of no certain future is very frustrating. It ruins personality. And
excuse me, not if you accept it and see it as an adventure.
Yeah,
That's easier.
That's it. That's it. This was a moment when I felt myself relieved that, okay, I'm gonna die in my city, in my bed, but going through this great history, great, not great as kind of experience, but big history, great in its measure, with my community, with my people. So that's how my destiny looks like. I'm okay with that, and it was kind of relief. But there is also a moment when you need something in the future to hold on that. Do you remember some things in the future helped you to conquer this uncertain reality?
Yes. In 1994, that's 2 years into the war, I was sick and tired of it. When it started, as a young reporter, I thought that my reporting will contribute to the end of this war, that I, Aida, will end this war. That if people outside would only know what's happening to Big Me, they will, all stop breathing until my war is over. And, it took me 2 years to realize, no. at which point I decided I'm going to leave Sarajevo. My son is already in Germany as a refugee. I visited him once, and because I got pneumonia as a foreign reporter in my own country, working for the Associated Press, I could board one of these sacred UN flights and leave. So I arrive in Frankfurt with this pneumonia, and everybody in the AP and everywhere, you know, thought I'm going to stay, which is natural. You're going to stay with your baby, and you're in Germany. But arrived in Germany, and I went to the authorities to report myself as being present there, in which case you get a permission to stay there as a refugee, which is called duldung. Now, most Bosnians don't know what duldung means, but I happen to speak German, and duldung I saw as a word that has its root in the verb dulden, which is to translate to put up with. Something like that, dulden, yeah, putting up with something. So they gave me this duldung. It was a 10-minute process. They were very nice. And I remember getting out of that building, and there was a park, and I sat there and said, Aida, you made it really far in your life. You have the status in a foreign country of somebody they have to put up with. And it was that moment when I got that duldung just because of its name, that on that bench in that park, that I decided to go back to Sarajevo and leave my baby in Germany. And that was the moment when I decided I need to have a country. I can't be geduldet, somebody to put up with. I'm, for the rest of my life, grateful to Germany for having accepted my mother and my son and giving them refuge. I was too embarrassed to have them receive. The country has a social support for refugees, and I told my mother not to take that because I'm actually having a very good salary. So I decided I'll support them. I can't. It was below. I would have felt like a parasite, I guess. And the moment Sarajevo was deblocked, I got into a car, picked up my family, and brought them back to Bosnia. What am I trying to say with this? Is that wars are also opportunities to think about yourself, your mission in life, your status in life, and your values. Now, it's easy just to leave the trouble and go sit in somebody else's country, in somebody else's house that is nicely and tidily arranged for the people who live there. And you just walk inside and sit down and say, I don't have my own house anymore, so I'm going to share this one with you. That's how I felt about being a refugee. It was somehow embarrassing. Now, there are examples where you have to be a refugee. There is no way back. But for me, there was. So that's what I did. Coming back, I was thinking about how in war times a society disintegrates and its values change. All of a sudden, the big boys become, you know, it's the rule of the jungle. Who is stronger, he lives better, because he can beat up the one who's maybe right, but weaker. In this kind of situation, it's very difficult, but it's very important to keep your values. to continue to persist on right or wrong the way your mother has taught you. Maybe those values are not valid on the street, but you have to keep them. Because one day this is going to be over, and then everybody's going to be remembering who did what. And where were you at the time? Were you a constructive member of that community who helped and worked on the greater good? Or were you just a war profiteer? Where were you? What did you do? It matters to keep your moral ground, even when everything else falls apart. And in order to do that, you first, in situations like this where we were deprived of water, of electricity, of heating, of food, of information, and of security. So the goal of that was to reduce you to an animal that just goes out to look for food and water. What that produced was a counter effect. People started reading books just to prove to themselves that they're still human beings. People who have never been to the theater went to one of those underground theaters that were organized in Sarajevo. Suddenly, everybody cared about culture. And very often that's considered as a tool of resistance. It is a tool of resistance, but it's actually a tool of self-preservation. You just don't want to be reduced down to an animal. And then you want to prove to yourself that you are a human being that cares about culture, although before you've never been to the theater, you've never read a book. Suddenly, everybody started reading books, having intellectual talks in basements, and talking about theater and film and philosophy and this and that. And, suddenly, professors of philosophy and literature became the most seeked for companions in bomb shelters, because they can teach you something. So, and I think that's a great thing, because a lot of these people who, after they came out of the war, continued going to the theater. But, war sometimes is good, for some people. So you have to find, in those situations, the best way to survive and prove to yourself that you are worth, that you are a human being, and that you matter. And one of the ways to achieve this is humor. Humor during war times becomes very black and is not understandable to people in the outside world. First of all, untranslatable and not understandable. And I've heard very often that from reporters who would come to Sarajevo, that our humor is very similar to the humor developed in Auschwitz. Like, vulgar, very black. And that's something I heard for the first time. Like, our humor is like the humor in Auschwitz? Yeah, the Jews developed such a humor in Auschwitz to survive. And so did we. So you probably have your really bad jokes.
We do.
That the rest of the world doesn't understand. But keep them up, because it will feed your self-consciousness and your, it's better to laugh and go down like the Titanic with an orchestra playing than break down. That's my advice.
Thank you. I'll just share a short story. We have a practice with our pan-Ukraine community to visit deoccupied and frontline territories to help people, to help libraries. to bring some military supplies to the units on the front line. And this experience, these emotions are very tough, naturally. And we do laugh in these trips as crazy, and our jokes are black as hell. And sometimes we have international journalists traveling with us, and they are trying to catch this this nerve of the conversation. They are trying to translate the jokes. They are constantly asking why they are laughing, because one moment we are crying with people in the demolished village, and the next moment we are laughing until falling in tears in the bus going to another demolished village. They are trying to understand why we are laughing, and when I'm trying to translate some more of our jokes, they are scared. They are just, you're sick. Yeah, yeah. And we must admit that we are sick, in fact. But there is our reality. There is no other reality we can live in. I just recalled myself, God knows why, the story of our friend Damir Shagol, who was at military service during the Bosnian War and made a lot of photographs. He's a great photographer and Pulitzer winner at the moment. And he left all those photos in his military barrack after leaving the service and never returned for them. He was reminded to come and to take these pictures. It was that time when pictures were very physical objects, and he was expected to come and take this box with photographs and with negatives and so on, and he never returned until the barrack itself was demolished and all the photographs are gone. Is it the way how the war experiences becomes burden, and you don't want? One day you just wake up and decide that you don't want to remember it.
Yes, I have rejected 4 publishers who wanted me to write a book about my experience. To go through this again? Nah. Just in the end, I wrote a book, but it's horrible, so I'm not going to share it with anybody. Somehow you kind of want to move forward. Here is maybe a good example. You know, I have devoted myself to the consequences of the Bosnian War and its efforts to make the world better, somehow. But 3 years ago, I went to a trip to Antarctica. I thought, well, what the hell, you know, you live once, let me go to Antarctica. So I went with this National Geographic ship, icebreaker, and wanted to see the penguins and what people. And I'm sitting there and thinking, you can go with them only if you help them, the scientists do something. So I was on this trip just holding a microphone, you know, recording sounds of the seals make and stuff. But it was interesting. And one day I was sitting on this ice with this microphone for hours in Antarctica and looking at these scientists, and 2 of them were crying. I said, what they're crying about? You know, what's wrong? They observe killer whales, and they have noticed that their killer whales were too thin, that there's no food. And I thought, it's the beginning of the season. They're going to catch something and gain weight. How's that a problem? And then I look at them and I think, look at all the wonderful jobs people have. You know, this one is investigating ice. The other one, air. The third one, seals, penguins, water, algae. And here I am. I devoted my whole life. First of all, if you go to Antarctica, you will see what the world would look like without us. It's beautiful. And I always thought that humanity is going in the wrong direction towards self-destruction, and we should reverse it. And when I went to Antarctica, I realized, man, we should speed this up. It's so beautiful. We should all die to let this beauty thrive all over as soon as possible. But I was sitting there thinking, you know, look at these wonderful jobs that people have. And I devoted myself to, of all the species in the world, to the worst, and then among that species to the worst. I devoted myself to war crimes, organized crime, and corruption. Now, can it be worse? And that's a total failure. But, you know, I came back and I thought, yeah, it was, excuse my language, a shitty career. But I think I made a difference. I do believe I made a difference because I do have the feeling that I am one of these people who planted those trees along that alley. And in 1994, I was about to give up because I realized that I'm reporting and it feels, and nothing is happening, and that I felt like I'm yelling into deaf people's ears, you know, and it's not worth it. And that was about June 94, and the Associated Press reminded that it's the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the First World War, and the day of the assassination that triggered, not caused, the First World War of Franz Josef von Habsburg in Sarajevo is approaching, and we should maybe do a story about how in the city where the First World War was ignited, there's a war again. And I was thinking of how to illustrate that. So I thought, maybe somebody is alive who's a witness of that assassination. And miraculously, I found a 92-year-old guy who was there and saw the assassination as a kid. So I went to interview him, and he was so deaf you had to scream your sentences, your answers, and and then he would answer back screaming at you. And the whole interview lasted for 2 days, but over those 2 days we became very close, you know. And I realized that Ismet was his name. He knows everything about the First World War, the Second World War, but he was too old to catch what triggered this war, what the hell is happening, you know. And 2 years into the Sarajevo siege, he's asking me, who's shooting? You know? Don't make me, okay. But, and I realized I know about the Second World War, the First World War, only what I know from textbooks, but here's a real witness, you know. So combined, the two of us could put together 100 years of Sarajevo's history. And the 100 years of Sarajevo's history looks like this. The house I'm interviewing Ismet in was built by his father during the Ottoman Empire. Sarajevo was part of the Ottoman Empire. By the time it was finished, Sarajevo became part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And Ismet was born as an Austrian in that house. Then the First World War happened, and after the end of the First World War, Sarajevo was part of a kingdom called the Kingdom of Slovenes, Serbs, and Croats. That was the third country in this house. And then after that, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And then came the Second World War, and Sarajevo was part of the Third Reich. It was occupied. And after the Second World War, Sarajevo was part of Yugoslavia. And he was telling me all this, going through that timeline, and then he turns to me and says, "What's this country called now?" Bosnia-Herzegovina? Really, that's a country? That used to be a province of everything I know. And I actually made a movie about this. It's called What's This Country Called Now? And we were talking about, and that's when I realized how turbulent the history of my country is. This guy I'm talking to has been living in 5 different countries. He never left his house. So, you know, as we were talking, he asked me, like, "What are you doing here? Where's your family?" I said, "My family's in Germany. I thought, you know, I can contribute as a journalist to peace, to something, but I see that this was an illusion, and I'm just going to give up. Nobody cares. Maybe I'm going to go too and be a refugee, because this makes no sense what I'm doing here. It has absolutely no effect." And he looks at me, "Maybe." But you know, after the Second World War, I was talking to some people in Zagreb. And I asked them, "Where were you that night when they took your neighbors away, never to return again? What did you do? What did you think?" And everybody had the same answer. "I didn't know." And he said, "Maybe they didn't, because nobody reported about it." So afterwards, everybody had a good excuse for not doing anything. I think what you should do is to continue reporting and stop thinking that you're going to stop this war with your reporting. But what you will do is make it possible for no one after this to be able to say, "I didn't know." And I sat there, and he was a railway worker. I said, here's this railway worker of 92 who just told me what my mission in life is. And I stayed. I continued to report, thinking that with every report I sent out into the world, I have taken people the possibility to say, "I didn't know," turning an excuse into a choice. And for me, that was enough. That's why I'm still a journalist, and I'm not researching penguins.
Thanks for this great story, very Serbian, or very Bosnian one, and very comparable to some Ukrainian stories also, and full of this genuine humor, also a very, very peculiar one. We have only 10 minutes left. A lot of topics to discuss. In fact, I feel that conversation just started, but my 2 questions I have to ask you are linked between each other. Do you have some tips for us to do something with this huge crack in this common experience in the society itself, in the body of society, which starts to be more and more visible with people with different experiences, with those who left the country for different reasons, for different choices, between those who stayed in these so-called peaceful cities, with those who are in the frontline cities, between those who are in army, between those who still continues to do their work like always. All those choices and decisions making us feel separated, feel very different. Can we heal it? And also, is it possible to heal and to reinvent, to reconstruct humanity inside yourself after the war stops, whatever it means again?
First of all, you don't have to abandon humanity because you're in a war. That's actually a reason to keep it. But
sorry,
Yeah.
just a quick remark. It's sometimes you feel yourself like you're dead inside, and there is nothing human left. It's exhaustion. It's burnout. But sometimes you feel that you're not human anymore. In that way, you're used to explain humanity to yourself. You should reinvent it somehow. That's my feeling, my very subjective feeling, but maybe you could advise also on that.
go to the theater. It's, you have to continue trying to be a cultural human being, even under the worst of circumstances. I know that one of the big film festivals in Eastern Europe is the Sarajevo Film Festival. It was born during the war, just because Quentin Tarantino was nice enough to send a VHS tape of his new film, Pulp Fiction, to Sarajevo so people can watch it, not realizing that we don't have electricity to watch it. But somehow through UNHCR, the Academy for Arts got hold of this tape, and they decided, okay, we're going to ask the UN to provide a generator and some beer maybe, and we're going to organize a public viewing of this movie. And I was there, So we all went to watch Pulp Fiction. And it was, it was a very violent movie. And at some point the shooting started outside, but we couldn't really distinguish, is John Travolta shooting or is it outside shooting? And it was kind of a fun event. But the guy who organized this came out on stage, and said, well, we're going to watch a new movie from so-and-so. This has been on festivals all over the world, and now it's in Sarajevo, and I welcome you to the first Sarajevo Film Festival. And that ended up as a real film festival that matters. But that was actually meant as a joke when he said it. So out of these desperate situations, really beautiful things can come out. You don't recognize them in time, but you will see later that this situation will give birth to beautiful art, and you can't burn out. Just do art, do journalism, do what you do. And you will be fascinated later of your success. Somehow little Bosnia, like 2 million people, we got after the war, the Oscar, several Golden Bears, the Palme d'Or, all reporting about what the hell we went through, just by that. And, as one of my, after that viewing, they decided also to have a theater festival. And one of my colleagues interviewed the director of a theater festival in Sarajevo, where you have like 5 people sitting in the audience, and there's 3 times more actors than audience because the sniper is shooting outside. And there was this really cool question. I think the Reuters reporter asked Haris Pashovic, the director, like, why a theater festival in the middle of the war? And Haris looked at him and said, why a war in the middle of our of our theater festival? And I thought that was such a great approach to the problem, you know. You are a nuisance. I am normal. I'm the festival. Damn it, you know. So if you think like that, you don't burn out. That's my tip.
Thank you so much. I suppose we are out of time already, and maybe some questions from audience, or we should continue our conversation informally. I'm very grateful for you, Aida, for coming, for sharing your experience, and, you know, Sarajevian and Bosnian experience, all the way where my way of hope to stay human, to stay alive in all the possible senses of this, all possible meanings of this. And so we are continuing to live, to love, and to make art, journalism, and many others important.
And black jokes.
And black
That's
jokes.
Essential.
Nothing without them. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Please. Thank you. I'm grateful to both of you, Aida, Kateryna. Thank you so much. And you know, it's wonderful to meet someone who has such a black sense of humor as you have. Thank you, from me personally. So, we have two news, good and bad. A bad one is that it's over for today, here on this location. And the good news is that we will continue with an opening party at Kyiv's Creative Space. Our office and Lviv Media Hub, which is a place for journalists and media professionals, are also located here, so it's a home party. And we'll have also transfers to Kyiv's Creative Space, because I do not think it's a good idea try to go there on foot or something like this, especially this weather. So we have two buses, two transfers. The first bus will arrive at 18:20. The second is 15 minutes later, 18:35. You will see them just in front of Lviv Tech City building, and our volunteers will help you to get to the buses. So thank you for being here today, and see you at Kyiv's Creative Space.